Hi, I'm Dr. Akiba Green with Lake Norman Health and Wellness. I'm here talking about health risks of genetically modified foods. The presentation that I'm about to do is based on information that I've compiled from multiple sources, including the book Genetic Roulette and my own personal experience. You know, everything going on right now with genetic modification is really coming to a head. There's a critical mass that you're seeing. The walks against Monsanto, people requiring in states in the Northeast that you have proper labeling of genetically modified foods. Last year, California had a proposition that was shut down by huge money. So people in California have no idea what they're eating still, and the big corporations won that round, but we're seeing a huge backlash because of that. You got to go all the way back to 1992 to really figure out when this whole thing started. And there's actually a statement. The agency is not aware of any information showing that foods derived by these new methods differ from other foods in any meaningful or uniform way. That sentence was a 1992 Food and Drug Administration, FDA, policy, which still stands today. And it's the reason why genetically modified crops are on the market. On the basis of that statement, the FDA said no safety testing was necessary. If Monsanto or the other biotech food companies say their foods are safe, the FDA has no further questions. It's absolutely insane. That sentence was a complete lie. In reality, the overwhelming consensus among the agency's own scientists was that genetically modified foods could lead to unexpected, hard-to-detect side effects, allergens, toxins, new diseases, nutritional problems. The scientists urged their superiors to require long-term safety studies. Who overruled the scientists? Well, the man in charge of the FDA policy. His name was Michael Taylor. He was Monsanto's former attorney. Later, he was Monsanto's vice president. The White House under George H.W. Bush instructed the FDA to say, hey, promote biotechnology. There's nothing wrong with that, I get that. But what the FDA did is they created a new position for Michael Taylor. As a result of that position and of the policies that he oversaw, if Monsanto, Cargill, and the other big giant companies wanted to put a genetically modified crop on the market, they didn't have to tell the FDA. GM companies participate in what's called a voluntary and highly superficial consultation process with the FDA. Basically, they offer summary data. Here you go. It's their own conclusions of safety. We made this. We think it's safe. Michael Taylor is now back at the FDA as the U.S. Food Safety Czar. He's the person in charge of the FDA's GMO policy. It's kind of like the cart leading the horse. Our country is on the wrong path. The rest of the world gets it. Europe banned GMO. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And literally within 2 weeks of a huge outbreak, there were no GM products sold in Europe at all. I mean, it was giant how big the critical mass was. And we just don't get it here yet. It's coming. But we have to do something about it because the problem is genetically modified crops hurt us. They really, really hurt our health. They're inherently unsafe. Now, what GMOs are, and a lot of my patients say, hey, what is a genetically modified, what is GMO? What does genetic modification mean? Genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, are where you take a gene from one species, say a bacteria or a virus, and you force it into the DNA of another species, like soybeans or corn plants. Irrespective of what gene you put into it, the very process of creating a GMO results in a huge amount of collateral damage in the plant. This can increase toxins, allergens, carcinogens, and anti-nutrients. I'm going to give you a couple examples of how the process can cause damage. Scientists created a genetically modified potato that produces its own insecticide. They fed the GM potato to rats. They also fed another group of rats a potato spiked with the same pesticide that the GM potato was engineered to produce. And the third group got regular potatoes. And they all received a balanced diet other than that potato. The group that ate the genetically modified potato with the insecticide coming out of the potato was seriously damaged. However, the potato spiked with the insecticides alone, so it's a potato without genetic modification but with insecticide, it didn't have any problems. So think about this a minute. The reason why the health damage in the rats occurred was not the insecticide. It was most likely the process of genetic engineering. The rats developed potentially precancerous cell growths in the digestive tract, smaller brains, livers and testicles, partial atrophy of the liver, and damaged immune systems. And this was published in Lancet in 1999. The stomach lining. I've got a little picture I'm going to show right here. On the left, this is the stomach wall of a rat who was fed healthy, non-genetically modified potatoes. On the right is the stomach wall of a rat who was fed the genetically modified potato. It's inflamed. It's tremendously bigger. The reason for that is because of this damage that occurs from the genetic modification itself. Now, after genetically modified soy was introduced into the United Kingdom, soy allergies skyrocketed more than 50%. This was in March 1999, reported by York Laboratory, a laboratory that does allergy testing in Britain. There are many ways in which genetically modified soy increases allergies. It's got a higher level of herbicide residues, which also can trigger reactions. And there's a 7-fold increase in the allergen trypsin inhibitor, which is in cooked genetically modified soy, compared to cooked non-GMO soy. So I tell my patients, when we test for food sensitivities, and soy is one of the things that we look for, patients who are not sensitive to soy, if it's genetically modified, you still want to avoid it because of how dangerous it is for you. One preliminary study suggested the presence of a new allergen in genetically modified soy. In fact, mice who were fed this GM soy showed reduced digestive enzymes, which might increase allergic responses to many different proteins. This means that the Roundup Ready protein, a potential allergen, may be continually produced inside our own intestines even after we stop eating genetically modified soy. So the scary thing is we're eating foods, and these insecticides, these proteins, stay in us, and they perpetuate long after we stop eating the food. Rabbits that were fed the Roundup Ready soy had higher metabolic activity as well as changed enzyme levels in 3 main organs. Mice that were fed the Roundup Ready soy for 8 months showed significant changes in the liver, pancreas, and testes. And these were published in 2006 in Animal Science Journal, 2002, Cell Structural Function. All these studies that I'm telling you, and I'm giving you some of the references for them, are studies that were published in the public medical literature, in the PubMed. What that means is the research is well known. A lot of these studies, most of these studies, are done by companies like Monsanto. So these companies are doing this research. They're saying how bad these products are, and then they're telling the FDA it's perfectly safe. I'm going to repeat that over and over again. They are outright lying to our government, and the government is saying, okay. The membrane surrounding the nuclei of liver cells is more irregular in genetically modified fed mice. The livers of mice also show higher metabolic activity. It suggests that the organs are reacting to a toxic insult. They're damaged and they're trying to respond. Rats fed GM soy also showed changes in their livers. Rats fed soy, this soy changed color in their testicles, changes in the cell structures. The testes of mice fed GM soy had altered structures and functions which influence sperm development. It leads to infertility and poor offspring health. In the embryos of parent mice who were fed this GM soy functioned differently than those with parents who ate non-GM soy. When a senior scientist from the Russian Academy of Sciences fed female rats GM soy, starting 2 weeks before they conceived and continuing through pregnancy and lactation, more than 50% of the offspring died within 3 weeks. Of the offspring whose mothers ate non-GM soy, only 1 in 10 died within the same time period. There's a huge dramatic reduction in average weight among those GM-fed offspring. GM cotton, corn varieties, they're engineered with a gene from the soil bacteria. It's called BT. When insects bite BT corn and cotton, they get a mouthful of a built-in toxin. It's produced in every cell of the plant. Literally, these engineered varieties of corn and cotton have the ability to kill something that tries to attack it because of this poison. And the poison splits open the insect's digestive system and kills them. So these GM plants are actually registered as pesticides with the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. Our animals, us, we're eating and wearing these GM plants. They're pesticides. Biotech companies claim that BT toxin has a history of safe use, since organic farmers and others use BT bacteria spray for natural insect control. Genetic engineers insert genes from the bacteria into the DNA of the corn and cotton, so the plants themselves are doing the killing, instead of spraying it. And that's the difference. They fail to point out that BT toxin produced in the genetically modified plants is 1,000 times more concentrated than natural BT spray. So if I spray organic produce with BT, it's going to help me prevent those, it's going to be a pesticide, it's going to help me prevent those insects and bugs from attacking my crops. But if I inject it into the corn and I splice it and it's genetically modified so the corn makes its own BT, it's 1,000 times more concentrated and it's designed to be more toxic. It has properties of an allergen, and unlike the spray, you cannot wash it off the plant. Just as mice fed natural BT toxin developed immune responses, so too do mice fed Monsanto's Mon 810 corn. So if I feed a mice the toxin, they're going to get sick. We kind of get that, right? You're giving it a toxin, you expect it to get sick. I'm going to give it the corn that has been genetically modified to produce that toxin, same response. Immune systems have the exact same response. In a study by Monsanto that was made public because of a lawsuit, rats fed BT corn developed signs of liver and kidney toxicity. It included kidney inflammation, kidney lesions, and decreased kidney weight. The latter symptom is typically related to blood pressure problems. So we're thinking maybe, ding, 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 we have an increased risk of heart disease in our country now? Is there a link here? They also developed increased basophils related to allergies, increased lymphocytes or white blood cells, which are part of the immune system, indicating a reaction to infection or possible disease. A 10% increase in blood sugar and decreased immature red blood cells, they're called reticulocytes, by 50%. That can indicate anemia. 2 other rat studies by Monsanto also showed signs of toxicity as well. One was with BT corn and the other was Roundup Ready. In India, hundreds of laborers who were picking cotton, working in cotton ginning factories, developed allergic reactions when handling the BT cotton. The most commonly reported symptoms were itching and rashes, but wounds, eruptions, boils, and discoloration also occurred. Also in India, after BT cotton is harvested, shepherds take their flocks into the area to graze on the BT plants. This was in a small town in central India. Within 5 to 7 days, 1 out of the 4 sheep died. Thousands of these sheep died in total because of this issue. And I can tell you that buffalo in India, the same area, the same province, who are fed GM cotton plants or cottonseed cakes, suffer from a variety of disorders. In this small village, villagers allowed their buffalo to graze on natural cotton plants for about 8 years without any problems. So the buffalo are used to grazing on cotton. On January 3rd, 2008, the 13 buffalo in this village grazed on BT cotton plants for the first time. Within 3 days, all 13 buffalo had died. A German farmer says a variety of BT corn caused 12 of his cows to die and others to fall sick. The corn producer is a company called Syngenta. They reimbursed the farmer for part of his losses, but they didn't admit fault. Well, why are they reimbursing him if they weren't at fault? If they had nothing to do with his cows dying, and all they did was provide the BT corn to him, they did nothing else for him, why would they be giving him reimbursement if it wasn't that BT corn that killed those cows? 25 farmers in the Midwest claimed that their pigs and cows became sterile when they were feeding them certain varieties of BT corn. Some pigs developed false pregnancies, gave birth to bags of water. On one farm, the corn that apparently caused the pigs to become sterile was later fed to the cows, and they too became sterile. The reports of animal sterility were not followed up with tests by the authorities. They just a denial that the problem was feed-related. It's impossible to come for the food, but they didn't do any testing or any follow-up or any research to actually back that up. They just said it. We know that soy genes can transfer into human gut bacteria. What if the BT gene transfers? It could theoretically turn our intestinal flora into living pesticide factories, possibly for the long term. In the 1980s, a brand of L-tryptophan, which is a food supplement sold in the US, was produced from genetically modified bacteria. That almost certainly created the contaminants within L-tryptophan, which was responsible for a deadly epidemic that killed 100 Americans and caused another 5 to 10,000 to fall sick or become permanently disabled. It took years to discover that epidemic was underway, and it required a series of coincidences, plus the fact that the disease had 3 concurrent characteristics. The disease was new, with unique symptoms that stood out. It was acute, so people went to doctors or hospitals very quickly. And it came on quickly, so they went to the doctors right after taking the L-tryptophan. Imagine if one of those 3 characteristics was not present. Imagine if the symptoms were something that were very similar to other conditions. Stomach upset, fatigue, headaches, trouble sleeping. Maybe you just start aching a little bit. Well, you may not have gone to the doctor. They may not have been able to tie your symptoms to this condition. What if taking these genetically modified foods create common diseases such as cancer, heart disease, diabetes, or obesity? It would likely have remained undiscovered, would still be on the market today. Similarly, if it created symptoms that weren't so serious, or if symptoms didn't come on quickly, it might never have been traced to the L-tryptophan. We don't know if GM foods, which were widely introduced in late 1996, contributed to the fact that food-related illnesses in the U.S. doubled between 1994 and 2001. Or the fact that the percentage of Americans that suffer from 3 or more chronic illnesses jumped from 7% in 1996 to 13% in 2004. And we can't be sure if GMOs contributed to the increase in allergies, asthma, migraines, ADD, or diabetes. We don't know because there's no post-marketing surveillance, no human clinical trials, no proper evaluation of plant changes or effects, and government approvals are based on disproved or untested assumptions or industry studies, which are widely criticized as rigged to avoid finding problems. In May 2009, the American Academy of Environmental Medicine released a policy paper urging all doctors to prescribe non-GMO diets for everyone, stating that animal studies show that GM food is linked to infertility, immune problems, accelerated aging, organ damage, and gastrointestinal problems. They called for a moratorium on GMOs and mandatory labeling. Eyewitness reports from around the world show that when given a choice, a large variety of animals avoid eating GM foods. These include cows, pigs, geese, squirrels, elk, deer, raccoons, buffalo, mice, and rats. So completely different species and different types of food. They all get sick when they eat GM foods. They don't eat it. They avoid it. They know to stay away from it. Although genetically modified organisms are one of the most dangerous health environmental risks that we face, they're also one of the easiest of our major problems to solve. Unlike trans fats or sugars, GMOs don't offer any perceived consumer benefits. There's no reason to eat them. Furthermore, when consumers realize the health risks, they're highly motivated to choose brands without GMOs. Just a small percentage of the population switching to non-GMO brands will create a tipping point, forcing major food companies to quickly replace GM ingredients. We've talked about the walk against Monsanto. This is the kind of tipping point we're talking about. Target is now creating a GMO-free brand. Target is one of the largest retailers, one of the largest grocery stores in the country. They're offering this to people because they know people want it. When the tipping point of consumer rejection was reached in Europe in 1999, within 7 days, virtually all major food companies committed to removing GMOs completely. There's no GMO in Europe. It's all removed from the food that we eat because people wouldn't allow it. In the US, if even 5% of the US population rejected genetically modified brands, it should be more than enough to reach this tipping point. In fact, 53% of Americans right now say they would avoid GMOs if they were labeled. In my clinic, Lake Norman Health and Wellness, I see hundreds of patients where every year they have chronic illnesses, and they're misunderstood by the traditional medical clinician. Thyroid dysfunction, fibromyalgia, peripheral neuropathy, multiple sclerosis, tremors and neurological disorders, OCD, ADD, ADHD, brain fog, memory loss, irritable bowel syndrome, celiac disease, cancers. The list goes on and on and on. These are the kinds of patients that we see in our clinic who don't get help anywhere. If we're able to stop people from eating GM foods, I truly believe that a large percentage of the sick people I see in my clinic would not need the type of care that we have to provide them. Their bodies would do what they're designed to do, and the patients would not get sick. If you're interested in learning more about genetically modified foods, the health risks associated with them, and how my office can help you with your chronic health problems, I encourage you to call and schedule either an in-office consultation with me, Dr. Green, or a distance medicine consult with me. My office number is 704-987-3993. My website is www.drakibagreen.com. That's drakibagreen.com. And my blog is www.askdrakiba.com. That's askdrakiba.com. Thank you very much, and have a great day.